McDonald met Max Gardiner when he was a customer in a Melbourne Big W store. Now, he was charming and swept her off her feet during their brief romance, but he quickly became too intense, and then he went on to stalk her for the next 3 years. The ordeal drove McDonald to attempt suicide, actually believing she was crazy. But her ideal is made for a frightening and compelling two-part series with the ABC's Australian story called To Catch a Stalker. It's still available on iView, and I urge you to watch it. And to tell us about what actually happened and how she has found an incredible strength from the saga that no one should have to find, we've got McDonald with us today at The Informer. Good morning, Di.
Morning, how are you?
Good, thanks. Now, this is a horrific but all too common story that thankfully didn't end up in the saddest of all tragedies that we see all too often. What can you tell us?
So at the beginning, when we were dating, I never let him stay overnight in my home. My youngest daughter was 16 at that time. So, you know, he would come during the day, but he would never stay over. So, you know, even while we were dating, strange things were happening. Like there was an issue with my car one morning. I couldn't get it out of the driveway. So I walked to work to open the store. And he came in for morning tea, and I told him, you know, I had issues with my car. And he knew straight away what was wrong with my car and grabbed some power steering fluid off the shelf and paid for that. And he asked me for my keys. And, you know, I didn't think anything more of it. Gave him my keys. He said, if I can't fix your car, I'll take it to my mechanic. So didn't really think anything more of that. He ended up taking my car to the mechanic because the power steering cable had been cut, and it cost me money to fix it. And yeah, what I didn't realize at that time was he had keys to my house cut. He had a new remote linked to my car, and also a car key cut. So that actually came up later on when we broke up for the last time. And I was talking to my neighbour, and it was Mother's Day, 2015. And she informed me that Max is there every day, letting himself into my house with keys. So she thought that was strange because she knew that we were only dating and that he wasn't staying overnight. So yeah, when the issues started, Marina actually gave me, they had a guard dog. So she actually gave me the attack word for their guard dog. So I thought if he comes over, I can get their dog if I'm desperate and they're not home. But I called in a locksmith the very next day after she told me. And I you know, changed everyone's lunch breaks at work so I could meet the locksmith at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which wasn't my usual lunch break. But Max turned up. So my house is wide open and he just walks in. And you can imagine an argument starts. The locksmith was actually going to call police. Max left. But then as I'm paying the locksmith and locking up and everything, Max comes back. So I then asked him, how did you know I was home? This isn't my lunch break. And he said that my staff at Big W had told him that I was home. So I'm heading back into work and I check with everybody. They hadn't even seen him. So when I got home that night, I started going through my phone because I'm thinking he must have a tracker or something on my phone. And it took me a very, very long time to find the tracker, but I did. And my youngest daughter, you know, kids today are just amazing with technology. And it was before the cloud as well. She actually put everything onto iTunes and did all my updates, did a factory reset on my phone, and then put my photos and contacts back on my phone. And thought, okay, and I looked for the tracker and it was gone. So I thought, fantastic. So I go to work the next day and Max rocks up. And I was out the front at Gloria Jean's just having lunch, and he sits down and like my phone's on the table, and I'm thinking, my phone. Sure enough, yep, the tracker was back on. So my youngest daughter did what she did previously, and it didn't quite work. We did get rid of the tracker, but also I lost messages, some text messages and that I would have liked to have given police that Max had sent me. So they were actually gone. And again, Max comes into work and puts the tracker back on my phone. This time I go to Telstra, and the technician there finds the tracker, takes it off my phone, but again, it's back on. I go back into Telstra, and he said, look, the only way you're going to resolve this issue is to get a new phone and phone number, and iPhones are not cheap. So I went home, and a few days later, I went back into Telstra, and because I owned that iPhone, so I left that at home, so he wouldn't know I was back in at Telstra. I purchased a new phone and phone number and set up a plan for that, and asked them to delay in disconnecting my other phone. So, a couple of days later, they disconnected it, and Max was actually beside himself. He was in the car park at Big W looking for my car. And I know this because my boss was actually sitting in her car with one of the other managers, and they were watching him frantically run around the car park looking for my car. So when he stopped at my car, and one of the other managers, Kate, she told our boss that, oh, that's Di's car. So Kate came back inside and told me that Max had been running around like a lunatic looking for my car. And then he left. So I kind of had validation then that my phone had been disconnected, so he couldn't track me anymore. So it's just been an ongoing saga.
So Di, it's fair to say that you wanted to be rid of this rat bag. You were trying your hardest to do it. At what point did you go to the police?
It was when he started originally just coming over to my home anyway. I rang police. I asked them about trackers and things like that, whether or not they could tell if someone's car or phone had a tracker. I told them what was going on, and they said, you need to get an intervention order. And they said, we can't help you until you get an intervention order. So for me, I'd never set foot in a courthouse in my life. So it's like, okay, all right.
How helpful do you feel? How helpful do you feel that advice was, if at all? Or do you think there could be a process where they should refer you to somebody to help instigate that?
Yeah, because I had absolutely no clue. I ended up ringing them a second time, and I got the same police officer, and he said, have you got that order yet? And I said, well, no, because I don't know what to do. And he just said, go in and approach the counter, and they will then advise you on what to do. So that's what I did. I went in early June of 2015 and filled out the paperwork for an interim order. Kept going up to the clerk and asking her, is this right? Is this right? I was lucky when I went because the courthouse was actually very, very quiet. It was late, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after I filled out all the paperwork, she told me to take a seat and she might be able to get a magistrate to see me straight away. So, and that actually happened. So I went in, not knowing anything and just looking to the clerk sitting in front of the magistrate for cues, with what was happening, why did I need this? And he granted the interim order for a month. So then you go in and Max can contest the order being put on him. So that was on the 4th of July, 2015. And it was beyond difficult when I got to court that day. The night before, Christine from the Wine Larder had rung me to say that she'd received this letter kind of defaming me and how I act at their establishment and things like that. So I went over and picked it up and took it to court with me the next morning. So I check in with the counter to say that I'm here for the intervention order hearing. And she referred me upstairs for a duty lawyer. So I go upstairs, I'm waiting, and somebody came out and they said, sorry, but we won't be helping you today. We have history with the respondent, which is Max. So we will be helping him, not you. You can go downstairs and get some help from legal aid. So I go downstairs and legal aid takes forever. It's an absolute nightmare. And when my name was finally called, I went in and the person was very abrupt with me, didn't want to know me. He said, why are you here? You're the applicant. I only helped the respondent. So I'm like, okay, well, excuse me, who helps me then? So I had no help. So I had to go and front court by myself again. And again, I followed the cues from the clerk when I could speak and when I couldn't. Then the magistrate asked for what evidence I had, and I handed him the letter of what would become flyers. And Max then, even though he had a lawyer, he started arguing with the magistrate. I'm just looking at all of this, absolutely horrified, thinking, oh my God. And the magistrate, to his credit, he told Max to go and sit down and let his lawyer do the speaking for him. But Max would not listen to that. So in the end, the magistrate just said, look, don't insult my intelligence. I know you've written this. I'm actually going to grant the order. So I actually didn't have to speak very much because of Max's outburst. It all went against him. So I got the order for a year. But, you know.
Now, I'm going to jump ahead here, and a bit of a spoiler for those who are going to go into iView and watch the story to catch a stalker, and I highly recommend it that you do. Max ended up serving prison time for his stalking. He had a couple of breaches of the intervention order along the way. How long between this initial granting of the intervention order and Max toddling off to jail was there?
What's there?
Yeah, how much time?
Okay, so that's 2015. He went to jail in June of 2020. So 5 years later, in between all of that, he put up 22 flyers trying to get me raped, offering my services in a sexual way for anyone. He would use my photo. He would use my phone. Well, actually not my phone number. He would use my best friend Kathy's phone number, because remember I had changed mine, so he didn't have my phone number anymore, but somehow he had hers. He took me to court to try and get an order on me using hearsay, saying to the court that my daughter had given him my ex-husband's phone number and he was in fear of his life, that I'm vindictive, I'm manipulative, and he was in fear of his life.
So
absolutely none of that happened. And that was an absolute nightmare day. I was in court all day, and again, representing myself, because remember, I couldn't get anyone to help me. And every lawyer I rang had a conflict. He had used them before. So
you mentioned earlier that even the Women's Refuge said they couldn't help you because there was a conflict.
Yeah, the Women's Legal Service couldn't help me either.
Yeah.
So and the thing is, with a conflict, they don't tell you what the conflict is. So I don't know if they had represented another victim, because there are 5 others that I know of, or whether they had helped him.
Now, 5 years from the initial intervention, before he's finally faced justice and locked up, and in between the initial intervention order and the time where he goes off to serve a custodial sentence, the breaches of the orders, the threats go on, the flyers go on, he turns up out in front of your work because the intervention order you were granted didn't have a 200 metres, so he used to stand there and intimidate you at your place of work.
Yeah, he would watch me work. They didn't give the 200 metres because it was his local shopping centre. Mind you, in Craigieburn, there are 3 different Woolworths stores. There's a Coles. He didn't need to be shopping where I worked.
Now, I couldn't imagine living in that amount of fear, just knowing that not only was he in the area, but he was bold enough and actually emboldened by the uselessness of that intervention order. What was the tipping point where they finally took action, Di, where finally, like, this could have ended catastrophically, which we see on way too regular basis in the news. Week after week, we see the outcomes of these IVOs not being enforced, and this could have happened at any stage. What was the tipping point where they finally said, you know what, time for you to go and do some time?
Yeah, so the catalyst for it was after court, where I had just gotten back from overseas. Kathy, my best friend, had passed away, and my youngest daughter and I, we'd literally just gotten off the plane and was going home, and he's behind me. So I actually did get dash cam footage of that. And so after court that day, he was convicted, but, just given a fine for that breach. So right after court that day, and this is the catalyst, he went into Big W in Broadmeadows, still carrying his court documents, still wearing what he was wearing. And he went into the store. He was in there for 9 minutes looking for my youngest daughter. So he was asking management where she was, what he wanted with her, I'll never know. But I didn't go to court that day, and I'd had a really, really bad feeling. So I had rung Broadmeadows security in the morning and spoken to the security supervisor. So she was aware of what was going on. So she kept an eye on the store, and she saw him enter the store and she went down there. So she was the one that she rang police as well, and she rang me to say that he's actually at the store looking for her. So I then rang Ed O'Donoghue. Absolutely, I was screaming at him, to be honest. I was crying. I was just beside myself, thinking he can't get me anymore, because I had left Big W because I couldn't handle him standing there day after day watching me work. So I found a new job in the city, which, equated to a 60-hour week for me. So he couldn't get to me. So he thought he'd get to me through my youngest daughter.
What a horrible situation to be in.
Yeah. So Ed O'Donoghue, to his credit, was straight on the phone to Lisa Neville. And so Lisa then, I think, handed it to the Chief Commissioner, and I was assigned a sergeant at Broadmeadows and also a detective. So this is now 2018.
Okay. So in hindsight, which is a wonderful thing looking back, but more from the point of your lived experience, Di, what advice would you give not only to people such as yourself that are going through this, because it happens way too often, but what advice would you give to the police and the justice system of what actually needs to change?
Well, when it's a repeat offender, and all the police, all the magistrates, everyone can see his history. Now, he has history of convictions for breaches against intervention orders going back to the 80s. So, the last 40 years. So I'm not making this up, and I'm saying I have witnesses. I'm giving them footage. What more do they want from me? What more evidence do they want from me than I'm telling the truth? And they can see his history. Believe the person that is in there telling them that these horrific stories that are happening to them, instead of just saying, yes, we'll call him in, we'll have a talk to him. And of course, he's going to deny it. and then they let him go, and it would continue on. And I had reports all over Melbourne, and that was one of the reasons they said, because of that reason, they were all over Melbourne. Everywhere I went, something would happen. I'd ring 000,
And what about advice for people such as yourself? Because there are many who don't have your strength, your support network, that, I couldn't imagine living in that amount of fear and duress. What advice would you give to somebody who's in the situation that you found yourself in, Di?
Yeah, don't give up. Keep pushing it. Keep pushing. That's what I did. And it was through actually a Facebook group at that time called Protect Victoria. And I was talking to the administrator, Hayden Bradford was his name. And he was organising a meeting with the politicians, and he also organised the Today Show there to film it. I sat down the front. I didn't want to be on camera or anything, because then Max would know what I was doing. So only the Liberals showed up, and I typed up diary excerpts from 2015 to let them know what was happening. And it was only, for a few months. It was pages long, and I needed help desperately. So my advice, if police are not helping you, go to your local MP. It's a start. I was just lucky that I went to this Facebook group town hall type meeting to discuss crime. If I didn't go there, and it was well out of my area, it took me maybe an hour to drive there, but that was what changed everything for me, because I met, Matthew Guy and Ed O'Donoghue, and they took me seriously. Excuse me, sorry, I'm actually getting over COVID.
Oh, no. You're having a great run, Di.
my voice goes, yeah, sorry. And so persist.
Great.
Go to your local MP. If police are not helping you, you just have to keep going.
It's just a shame and a sad indictment that we have to coerce, cajole and push for basic human safety and that ability to live peacefully. So, Di McDonald, look her story up on iView if you can, To Catch a Stalker. It is a compelling, frightening and very illuminating story of what is all too common. Di, thanks for your story and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me tell my story.